Well, thanks for meeting with me. This is our second district work week. We have the new House leadership has decided what they want is they want the representatives in the communities at least once a month for a week. So in the old days, whereas they used to put together 2 and even 3 month segments where you would be in Washington constantly, what they do now is we have a break at least once a month to come into the districts for a week. And what I've asked my staff is that I want to make sure I visit each county at least once every 2-month period. So we had our first district work week earlier. Cecil County's turn was this district work week. So I'm glad to be here. And what I wanted to do specifically is meet with business folks in the district and meet with the elected officials in the district to hear, and other officials in the state government, to hear what the concerns are with federal intervention or help or whatever we can do. But I do preface the meeting that I've had over the past 2 months, always saying, just remember we're broke. I mean, we are broke. And that's because we have never followed the rules that local governments have to do, which is that the revenue side of the ledger has to equal the expense side of the ledger, and we just never cared to follow that in the federal government for decades. We're broke, and in the House we've made up our mind we're going to fix that. And as we fix it, you will see exactly what you've seen, I think, over the past few years with regards to the state governments. You will see a decrease in the amount of federal funding that's going to go to the local jurisdictions. And that's the bad news. The good news is we're going to try to make sure the amount of regulation coming to the federal government also decreases. Because otherwise, what we've done would otherwise amount to an unfunded mandate on a lot of local jurisdictions. And in general, we think the regulatory environment is too restrictive coming out of Washington, and specifically to local jurisdictions. That's one way we think we can help. And one example really is what Robert's talked about is the TMDLs. I mean, we took our first action on this. It was pretty one-sided action. I mean, what we did in the continuing resolution is take a vote to restrict funding to implement or promulgate the TMDLs for this fiscal year, and the vote was 230 to 195, and that's a pretty lopsided vote in the House, given the fact that the environmental interests like CBF do pretty good lobbying. I think even Mr. Goodlatte wasn't certain whether that amendment was going to pass when it came up for the vote, and I think it sent a pretty clear message that we really worry about overregulation. That's what I'm here to hear about. I'm here to hear about not only what perhaps your highest priorities of federal flow-through dollars is, because will some monies be available? Sure. I mean, the federal government's not going to shut off all funding to everywhere. So I think what we need to do is highly prioritize what local governments really need from the federal government, and then tell us where our regulatory environment interferes with your ability to do the job you need to do locally. And so those are the two. So that's what I'm here to listen. I'm not here to speak.
Well, I'll go first. Cecil County, we have 5 rivers that border the county, and we had talked about it before. We had dinner with the president of MACO and the executive director prior to our last night meeting. And one of the things that we kind of got out of that discussion was the fact that everybody wants clean water. I don't know anybody that doesn't want clean water, but this thing just kind of is just this catch-all, let's do it now, you got to have it in place, was kind of the discussion, rather than do it incrementally over time. If you slowly do it over time, we can get to the end result. But this draconian kind of approach of boom, you're just locked in, and I think the majority of us just kind of felt, if we don't know what we're doing or supposed to do, then the powers that be that are putting this down, they kind of know. So that was kind of what I took out of our meeting with the MACO folks.
What was MACO's? Is there uniform feeling among the rural counties represented in MACO, you think?
What MACO told us is that Cecil County is actually a little bit ahead of the curve. We understand more of the impacts potentially than some of the other Eastern Shore counties, and are not ready to sound the alarm, but getting close to that point. One of the biggest factors is that we don't even have the waste allocations from the state yet, and we'll get them in June, but that leaves us, according to the timeline, only 6 months to put together a plan. At the local level, we're required to provide a minimum level of service for health and safety of our residents. So as we look toward the future, we look at how that impact is going to go, and then the implementation of that plan. The 2 pilot counties, Anne Arundel and Caroline County, both have shared their information with the other counties, and the expense is considerable. So as local elected officials, we're very concerned, how are we going to pay for that?
Mm-hmm. And I take it there's no indication that any funding's going to come from the state to...
I've personally attended several work sessions, workshops, and where were we yesterday? What was that called? A forum? There's not $1 been offered by any agency, federal, state, anyone. And I can suggest to you that there's not one spare dollar that the county has. And if we had a spare dollar, we would put it in public safety, we would put it in paving our roads or do something.
Sure.
You're absolutely right. This is an absolute mandate without funding.
What
Totally.
I found ironic, Chesapeake Bay Foundation seems to be the driver in this, but not one dime they've offered.
Yeah, I'll bet they have a few spare dollars, but they haven't offered it.
Yeah, they haven't offered it even just in terms of just logistics or getting it off the ground.
Now, how do you develop the plan if you don't know the allocations? I'm not sure I understand that.
We don't either.
You're a doctor, sir.
Okay,
My
yeah.
stomach hurts. You need to operate right away. I'm not going to tell you the symptoms,
Anything
but
else,
cut me
right?
open.
Right.
You know?
The Maryland Department of Environment is really using the heavy hand to suggest to us that it's critical that we need to move forward. And it kind of reminds me of the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, and we're supposed to just do what they say, trust them, but there isn't much there behind what they say. And I hate to be like sheep to running into slaughter without having the facts and the science behind the initiatives and all the other things. It's just not well thought out, and the timelines are just way too aggressive.
Okay. And the first timeline that you have is to develop the plan by this fall? Is that right?
December,
By
the
December.
end of the year, correct?
I have to say this because it really perturbed me. At our work session several weeks ago, the gentleman said, oh, we really worked hard and we negotiated an extension of the deadline from June to October or something. Well, we won't even have those allocations that we need by June.
Right,
So
right.
here they've done us a favor by extending the deadline for something that we won't even have I don't know, they treat us like we're kids and we're stupid.
Okay. And that is all coming from the MDE, is that right?
I would say most of this is MDE.
But they're
based.
saying it's because the EPA is requiring us
Yes.
to do it, okay.
Yes.